Okay, so moving on in time, we come to probably more what you think of when you think of ancient Egypt, which are the dynasties. So, a dynasty is when we have a ruling family and the power passes from father to son. And it could be father to daughter too, but that was very, very rare in ancient Egypt. So we're going to look at the early dynastic, which is for dynasties, early dynastic and old kingdom in Egypt. So we have, when we look at the map, again, we have the lower part of Egypt here and the upper part of Egypt here because we're following the Nile. And these two areas were divided into very distinct regions. And we have then artistic conventions that develop that the way the body is created and the way animals are shown and stuff. And these last for like 3,000 years. They don't really change. And the majority of the work of ancient Egypt that we have is from tombs or temples. In fact, the majority of artwork made at this time period was used in either a tomb or a temple. And it was really created for the gods to see. So the commoners, the everyday people, they never even saw the artwork that we get to see in the museums. They would have seen artwork in the form of, a pot that has some decorative stuff on it, or a chair, or something like that. But not the statues that we'll be looking at. Now, one of our first really important people that we need to get in our head is Narmer. So Narmer was from Upper Egypt, and he then conquers Lower Egypt, and he marries the princess from Lower Egypt to unite the two kingdoms together as one. And this is the palette of Narmer. So we have these palettes where they would grind up herbs, and often then they would use it as makeup. So if you see pictures of ancient Egyptians and they have these black lines around their eyes, that's not for the aesthetic beauty of it. Instead, there were two things that were very functional about it. One, if you think of football players, they put the black under their eyes. That's to make it so that when they're looking out across the field, they don't get glare in their eyes. So that was one reason that the ancient Egyptians did that, is like to cut down on glare off of the sand. And then the other is that during the springtime, when we had the flooding take place, there were a lot of flies that would be born and be around. And the material that they were using, the plants that they were using, grinding them up and putting the makeup around their eyes, actually deterred flies. So it was a way of making it so flies weren't bothering your eyes. So let's look at the front and the back of this, and this would be early dynastic period. Remember the C here means circa, meaning it's Latin. We don't know the date, so this is an approximate date. So circa 2950 BC or BCE. We have Narmer here. He is shown, and we know right away this is Narmer because notice how he's so much bigger than everyone else. Doesn't mean he's 10 feet tall and everyone else is 5 feet tall. It just means that he's the most important thing here, the most important figure, so he's shown as bigger. This is called hierarchical scale, and it is used quite frequently in ancient art. And so here he is, and he has the scepter here. He's going to hit this guy over the head and kill him. So this would be a person from Lower Egypt. He's conquering Lower Egypt. Here we have the falcon. The falcon always represents the god Horus, and Horus is handing him a feather, meaning that he's like the chosen one. Narmer is the chosen one to be the first pharaoh. and unite these two kingdoms. We have somebody who is one of his attendants here that is carrying things and helping him. We have more dead Egyptians down here from, again, Lower Egypt that he conquered. We have the bull god here, again, saying that he is the chosen one. So now on the other side of the palette, we again can pick out Narmer right away because he's so much bigger. And when we have these kind of bands like this that we have divided up here, these are called registers. Again, something we see in a lot of ancient art, whether it be from Egypt or Mesopotamia or elsewhere. Notice the crown that he is wearing has changed. So here he wears the crown of Upper Egypt. Here he wears a crown that is symbolizing both Upper and Lower Egypt, showing that he has united both Upper and Lower Egypt. These people that are sideways like this, these are all the people supposed to be representing the people that were killed from Lower Egypt. Then he has his soldiers here and the attendants. They're a little bit more important, so they're a little bigger. It could be like a priest too. And then we have these dragon creatures, which would be related to the gods, the bull again. And then we have the bull here also killing somebody from Lower Egypt. So this has all been like approved by the gods that Narmer is supposed to be in control. So this is very interesting because this is our one item that we have that tells the story of Narmer. This is before written hieroglyphs. So we don't have a written record of this except for this. So we have things that we can say, yeah, maybe they're factual. Narmer did come in. He conquered Lower Egypt. He unites them. But certainly there were never any dragging creatures, right? There's not going to be a falcon that hands him a feather. So it takes both something that's realistic in history and something that's not. And we kind of have to, sift through the information from it and figure out what, in fact, is the realistic story here. I have a video here that gives you more information on Narmer. So one thing that's really interesting about Egyptian art is how the human body was shown. And it's shown in a way that's kind of strange, like we would never stand in that way. And if you try to stand in that way, it's very uncomfortable. So most of the figures are shown in what's called a composite view. So they're shown with a frontal and a profile view in one stance. So we have the head, which would be in profile, this, right? But the eyes, the shoulder, the torso, they're all shown as though we're looking at it straight. But then the hips, the legs, the feet are also shown in profile. So this was done because, as I just said before, the idea is that these are to be shown to the gods. And so they're trying to give the gods the most amount of information about themselves because the gods are what are ultimately choosing whether or not they get to go to the afterlife. So they're trying very hard to secure their space in the afterlife. They had this belief that everybody had a Ka in them, which was their spirit, and it lived on after you died. But in the very early part of ancient Egyptian culture, it would have only been like the pharaoh, his primary wife, people like this, very high importance that would have been allowed to go to the afterlife. And to secure and make sure that the Ka was able to live, the spirit of the pharaoh was able to continue on into the afterlife, they built very, very elaborate burial structures that we know today as the tombs. Probably most famous, the pyramids, right? So let's look at some of those. The earliest form of the pyramids was called a mastaba, and that's what's shown here. So it's a square base with a slightly slanted wall, and then the pharaoh actually was always buried underground. And then these were built on top of his tomb, or top of where he was buried. And then after we have the mastaba, then next we have a stacking of them, and they progressively get smaller. And this becomes known as a step pyramid. Notice he's still buried down here. And then the last is like the true pyramid. That's what we really think of when we think of Egyptian pyramids, is this. And it has the flat wall, a square base. Note he's still buried down here, but notice how we have kind of like these complex corridors that are shown in this. And what had happened is this is taking place over thousands of years, this development. And people knew that the pharaohs would have been buried with very, very expensive things like pounds of gold and rubies and emeralds. And so they were going into the tombs and raiding them and stealing stuff. So when the pharaohs, when we get to this point, they go, well, I want to make sure that my body doesn't get disturbed because I want to make sure I'm able to continue on in the afterlife. So they start to build these fake corridors and stuff, like literally think like Indiana Jones. You walk down, a hallway and you step on something and a wall closes behind you and there's no way out and you're just going to die there. So these things really did exist in the pyramids. When we put a whole bunch of pyramids together, it's known as a necropolis, which literally means a city of the dead. So the first pyramid we're going to actually look at is a step pyramid. And it is one of the kings from the 3rd dynasty. His name was King or Pharaoh Djoser. And Djoser commissioned the first step pyramid that I'm showing you here. This is what is left of it. So it was built, again, circa, meaning approximate, 2,630 to 2,575 BCE. It's made out of limestone, and it was just like an amazing architectural achievement for this time period, to make a structure this large. Nowhere else in the world are we having pyramids like this being built at this time period. Later, we have other pyramids, but the Egyptians were the first to build a pyramid like this. And where this is located, there are actually many, many pyramids. And again, what was that called? A necropolis. So when we have lots of pyramids put together, this is called a necropolis, a city of the dead. Okay, I'll pick this back up in the next video.